morning.
Good morning. Come in.
I thought we could take our dogs to the beach if you don't have other plans.
Sounds great. I just ordered breakfast. Would you like to join me?
You have now seen all you need to see to judge this episode. Season 1 Enterprise has been saddled with poor characterization, bad decisions, and stupidity. This episode, the last before the season-ending cliffhanger, tops it all by being incredibly, intolerably boring. I have no idea how long this review is going to be, but if I top even 7 minutes, I'll be surprised. There's not much to say about dull idiots going on vacation. Anyway, they finally reached Risa, so Archer and his dog are heading down to a villa. Allow me to show you another fine snippet of the episode, which is done in a unique style. Imagine you had a film about two actors, Bakula and Blalock, who were reflecting upon the science fiction show that they did together back in the day. And then, just for context, the film wanted to show you a clip from that show. Something that is clearly devoid of any emotional context and is merely the most generic scene you could possibly throw into your movie. This is what you'd shoot.
You had the same chance as the others.
All the same, the crew should come first.
Captain, you need a vacation.
Now you might have reacted to that and said, "Now come on, Chuck. After that build-up, I was expecting something terrible, but that clip wasn't that bad." But it's not about being bad as we typically think of it. Not all scenes have to be terrible in the what were they thinking kind of way. No, this is bad because it's uninspired and bland. And the episode spreads this kind of thing out to nearly 45 minutes. Just this never-ending sea of uninspired blandness. That scene from the beginning, it might as well have had Bakula saying, "Have I mentioned I'm an actor? Because I'm acting right now. Today's role shows me and a stranger that I've recently met greet each other, as actors do, with all the conversational warmth and chemistry of a bureaucrat talking to a Soviet-era border guard." Blacula's entire performance is devoid of life this week. If he was in a hospice, he'd have to tell people to stop pulling the sheet over his head. So they've piled into the shuttle to head down. This was chosen by lots, and by an extraordinary coincidence, all the human main characters get the chance to go down for shore leave. Yep, it was a totally fair lottery system. Suckers. As for the alien main characters, T'Pol is fine if you prop her up in a closet, so that's no problem, and Phlox is going to spend his time in hibernation. Cutter is going to handle things in the meantime because having a second doctor on board would be madness. So let's check out that villa. I'm thinking what makes Risa a paradise planet is its lack of building codes. If things were that loose around here, I wouldn't need to move. Of course, I'd lay money that about once a month someone drinks too much and falls off those stairs. So Archer heads outside with a lovely view of some place that they could never afford to actually send a crew. Plus, there's a telescope, perfect for any species who keeps their eyeballs in their abdomen. Although for Archer, it'll be convenient since he's so fond of navel gazing. Let's chicken on Trip and Reed for the only thing that ever comes to my mind when I'm reminded of this episode.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me no more.
I honestly don't know if it's better or worse if they did this intentionally. On the one hand, stumbling into it is precisely what I expect from Enterprise, but on the other, thinking that they're in on the joke when they actually make themselves the butt of the joke is also typically Enterprise. Well, anyway, these two are here to get laid. You would think that given all Quark needed for a threesome was to wave a pair of tiki statues at a pair of beautiful women, that these two could manage this task fairly easily. But if so, You fell for the trap. You assumed they're not imbeciles. Now, this is a common trait because when Archer discovers that his neighbor's dog managed to get up on his balcony in the seconds that it took him to get a drink, he questions it, but quickly forgets about figuring out an answer. Unless that dog had superpowers, there is no way it got up here on its own. But the owner comes over and acts like it's nothing special, that her pet can either fly, stick to walls, has a spelunking kit, or can warp the fabric of space and time.
Well, I'm sorry to disturb you.
I'll let you get back to your green screen. Hoshi's vacation is to be spent learning languages, and to each their own. After all, I'm not knocking Trip and Reed's desire to do some boning on vacation. I'm knocking their unfunny, tedious, and clearly doomed attempt at it. Failing to get laid on Risa is like falling out of a boat and failing to get wet. You have no one to blame but yourself if that happens. Well, her actions draw the attention of a handsome stranger who is interested because his people have an extremely complicated language. Well, mecca lecca hi mecca hi ni ho right back at you. Meanwhile, Archer is out looking through the telescope when he spots his neighbor. She calls to him, he's not peeping on her with the telescope. There are limits to the bottom of even Archer's character. She comes over and they talk about things, including that his ship is one of exploration.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're naming schools after you back on your world.
Archer Elementary. It has a nice ring to it.
Well, I do think of elementary school whenever I think of the brilliance of Jonathan Archer. Meanwhile, Reed and Trip are being a bit more forward in their efforts.
Have you seen the subterranean gardens?
Huh? Oh yeah, I lost my virginity in high school. Well, these numbnuts follow the two girls down into the basement of this place on the assumption that that is how you get to these fantastic subterranean gardens. It turns out that that is not in fact true. It also turns out that these aren't women. I've been on some bad dates, but never had one transform into a bat. Now a shrew, on the other hand. These two are going to rob Reed and Trip, but what they don't know, nor does the audience as it didn't make the final cut, is that Enterprise traded a big supply of dilithium so that the expenses of the crew would all be gratis. So they have nothing but the clothes on their backs. But the aliens are willing to settle for those. You have witnessed the most exciting event in the entire episode. Lucky you.
Enterprise.
It's Travis, Sub-Commander. Could you send a shuttle pod down?
What's the problem, Ensign?
I had a little rock climbing accident.
Yes, the most tense, interesting, drama-filled thing in the entire episode is something we learned happened earlier while we were watching Archer fiddle with a telescope. Have I mentioned this episode is dull? Dear God, it's dull. In fact, the high point of the episode is Mayweather's reaction to his situation.
These people have never treated a human before. I wanted my own doctor. Where's Phlox?
He's not available.
What do you mean he's not available?
He's sleeping.
Well, wake him up.
It's the end of season 1, and by now Mayweather has realized what a huge mistake he's made getting on this ship. Well, as if the episode can't stand the excitement, together in this scene are also the two performers from the Voyager episode Muse that we covered recently. It's the poet and his love interest both. That's how far I have to go to find something worth saying about this episode. Yeah. At this rate, I'm going to be looking for amusing anecdotes from the electrician. Yeah, director wanted a standard cable, and I told him the draw you got here, you're not going to want to take chances. This place will go up like a tinderbox, I tell you what. So, let's go check up on those two idiots.
I don't plan on spending our entire trip tied up in a basement.
Not unless we paid for that service. Back on the ship, Mayweather isn't doing so well. It looks like he might be reacting to the pain meds the alien hospital gave him. This is the kind of thing that any member of the ship's medical staff could be able to handle, but it is beyond the abilities of Cutter. This means that one of two things is true. Either Enterprise decided to hold this lottery without regard for department and sent down all the medical personnel, or, as seems to be generally supported, there's just Phlox. Both are a sign of a poor lack of planning. Even a paramedic would be able to breeze through this problem, but Cutter can't because her medical training is whatever hobby stuff she has picked up off of Phlox over the past few months. Remember, she's an entomologist. Travis doesn't even have the right number of limbs for her to treat him. I think I see the problem. There's a severe softening of your exoskeleton. Meanwhile, Hoshi is still trying to learn from that alien.
In my language, Kihowi is,
What?
I don't know the word. May I show you?
Sure, why not?
We call that harassment, mister. Hoshi leaves with him while Archer gets another visit from his neighbor. That's where that scintillating opening scene came from. I'll come back to it in a moment. First, we have to wake up Phlox to take care of Mayweather.
Who's sick?
Ensign Mayweather.
Who?
Yeah, a lot of people treat Mayweather like this. Who? Oh, yeah, the guy who's been in space.
Well then. To sick bay!
Billingsley does what he can, but his part this episode is a classic example of just trying too hard and failing. I find it hard to blame Dorn, who had previously directed In the Cards, which was a comedy episode that actually worked. What particularly hurts is the contrast here. Billingsley has to play it way over the top, while Bakula and his co-stars seem like they're the ones who are hibernating during his scenes. Each makes the other's extreme all the more glaring.
I don't know anything about Ryzen vintages, but what do you say we throw caution to the wind and give it a try?
I'll be adventurous if you will.
Danger's my middle name. Why, one time I was out of kale, so I substituted spinach. I was off the rails in uncharted territory that day. Anyway, the thing that she brought up earlier, she brings up again now. The Suliban. Her family was wiped out by them, and she's entirely too pushy on the subject. And after just one sip of wine, she really can't hold her liquor, can she? So Archer discreetly, well, anything compared to her ham-fisted questioning will seem discreet by comparison, scans and then confronts her.
Your surgeons did a nice job.
What are you talking about? These are real. He's figured out that she's from the aliens who ran that Suliban detention camp. She responds to his questioning with a scratch from behind her nail that knocks him out. So he's really behind the curve because Tripp and Reed have awoken, freed themselves, and left in their undergarments. Oh, she got off pretty light with that kiss there, didn't she? I mean, Archer, drugged by an alien. Mayweather, drugged by an alien. Reed and Tripp, stunned unconscious by aliens. A kiss is nothing compared to that. In fact, it must have been a pretty good one because she wakes up in bed with the alien.
Not a very long vacation.
2 days and 2 nights.
Not liking that title drop. Sometimes it works, like all good things. A nice title drop. However, Mr. Worf, unleash the best of both worlds. Yeah, it doesn't always work, does it? Meanwhile, Phlox has come up with the cure for Mayweather and passed out on one of the beds. Archer, on the other hand, is woken up by Porthos so he can gather the crew to head back to the ship before they do something even stupider than they already have. The end. Post-episode follow-up. Annoying character goes to the planet Risa. It's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to shoot an episode there. Final score for 2 days and 2 nights is appropriately 2 out of 10. The only thing worse than watching these people at work is watching them not at work. Even Braga himself commented on how boring it turned out to be. The episode is so bad at comedy that I think it would be interesting to debate. Is this a comedy that failed? Or were they trying for something else and failed at that? Or did they just fail at everything? With Enterprise, there's always that third option, it seems. But hey, we've got another shot coming up at Enterprise for Season 4, which will be better than this. Because it pretty much has to be by any measure of quality. All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Whatever's in that bottle you broke got all over me. Stinks to high heaven.